Hey everyone, hope you're doing great. Welcome back to my channel. In today's video, we'll dive into what if Deku became a peaceful monk. Smash that subscribe button, and be sure to peek at the description below. Let's begin. The world was loud. For Izuku Midoriya, the world had always been a cacophony of noise. It was the roar of heroes clashing with villains on the morning news, the screaming sirens of police cruisers, the whispered mockery of peers in the hallways, and the booming explosions that erupted from the palms of his childhood friend. But the loudest noise was the one inside his own head. It was a frantic, desperate scratching, a moth trapped in a glass jar, beating its wings against the invisible walls of his reality. Analyze. Observe. Mutters. Strategies. Fears. Dreams. The noise was constant. It was the sound of a boy trying to justify his existence in a society that had deemed him obsolete before he had even learned to tie his shoes. Today, the noise was deafening. You're below the rejects, you quirkless wannabe. The classroom at Aldera Junior High was sweltering, the air thick with chalk dust and teenage aggression. Katsuki Bakugo stood by Izuku's desk, his palms smoking with the sweet, acrid scent of nitroglycerin. His grin was sharp, predatory, and entirely devoid of mercy. Izuku sat frozen. His hands gripped the hem of his black school uniform, knuckles white. Usually, this was the part where he trembled. Usually, this was the part where he stammered a defense, citing hero laws or historical precedents, trying to talk his way out of a beating. But today, something was different. The air felt heavy, like the pressure drop before a thunderstorm. You think you can rub elbows with us at UA? Bakugo sneered, snatching the notebook from Izuku's desk. Hero Analysis for the Future, number 13. You're just a pebble on the side of the road. You don't have a quirk. You don't have power. You're nothing. Boom. Bakugo clamped his hands around the notebook. An explosion muffled by the paper ripped through the spine. Smoke curled up, gray and choking. Izuku watched, his green eyes wide, as the charred remains of months of observation, his heart, his soul, his obsessive dedication, were reduced to ash and crumpled paper. Bakugo didn't stop there. He tossed the smoking notebook out the open window. Izuku watched it fall, fluttering like a wounded bird, down toward the koi pond below. If you want to be a hero that badly, there's a quick way to do it, Bakugo said, his voice dropping to a cruel, casual register as he turned to leave. Believe that you'll be born with a quirk in the next life, and take a swan dive off the roof. The class laughed. It was a nervous, sycophantic laughter, the sound of prey trying to appease a predator. Izuku didn't turn around. He didn't scream. He didn't cry. He just stopped. The moth in his mind, the one that had been beating its wings against the glass for 10 years, suddenly ceased its struggle. It didn't die. It just landed. It sat still, overwhelmed by the futility of the effort. Anger, Izuku thought, a strange clarity washing over him. He wants me to be angry. He wants me to be scared. He wants a reaction because it validates his own strength. Izuku stood up. The scraping of his chair against the linoleum floor silenced the lingering laughter. He didn't look at Bakugo. He didn't look at the teacher, who was busy pretending to grade papers to avoid the liability of intervention. Izuku walked to the door. Oi, Deku! I'm not done talking to you. Bakugo barked, small explosions popping in his palms. Izuku stepped into the hallway and slid the door shut behind him. The sound of the latch clicking into place was the most satisfying sound he had heard in years. He walked down the stairs, his footsteps echoing in the empty stairwell. He went outside to the courtyard. The koi pond was murky, the surface disturbed by the ripples of the fish darting toward the surface, expecting food. Instead, they were nibbling at the burnt edges of Hero Analysis number 13. Izuku waded into the shallow water, not caring that his shoes and socks were getting soaked. He picked up the notebook. It was dripping, ruined. The ink was running, the diagrams of Kamui Woods and Empty Lady blurring into incoherent Rorschach tests. He stared at his reflection in the water. A scrawny boy with messy green hair, frantic eyes, and a trembling lip. A boy who was always running, always chasing, always reaching for a hand that was never extended back. Take a swan dive. The words echoed, but they didn't sting. They felt distant, like a radio playing in another room. No, Izuku whispered. He looked at the notebook in his hands. This was his tether to the world of heroes. It was his desperate attempt to be relevant. It was also the source of his pain. By holding on to this obsession, he was holding on to the very thing that made Bakugo hate him, the very thing that made his mother look at him with tearful apologies instead of pride. Why do I want to be a hero? He asked himself. Is it to save people? Or is it to prove them wrong? If it was to save people, did he need to be All Might? Did he need to punch the sky and change the weather? Violence, Izuku realized, watching a large orange koi push a smaller fish away from a piece of bread. It's all just violence. Kaken uses it to dominate. Heroes use it to subjugate villains. Villains use it to disrupt society. It's a cycle. A wheel that grinds people like me into dust. He squeezed the notebook, water dripping down his forearm. I don't want to be part of the wheel, he murmured. Izuku walked over to the trash incinerator near the back gate of the school. He stood there for a long moment, the heat radiating against his face. With a slow, deliberate exhale, he tossed the notebook into the fire. He watched it burn. He watched the ink boil and the paper curl. And as it turned to ash, he felt a weight lift from his chest. It was terrifying, leaving him feeling hollow and light, but it was freedom. He didn't go home. He couldn't face his mother yet. Inko Midoriya was a saint, but her worry was a suffocating blanket. She apologized for his existence every day with her eyes. I'm sorry, Izuku. I'm sorry you're broken. He needed to be fixed. But not in the way she thought. He didn't need a quirk. He needed silence. He remembered a pamphlet he had seen years ago, stuck to a telephone pole near the grocery store. It had been weathered and torn, advertising a place called the Temple of the Verdant Peak. It wasn't a hero agency. It wasn't a dojo for combat sports. It was a retreat. A place for those who seek the strength of the willow, not the oak. He had memorized the location because he memorized everything. It was in the mountains of the Gifu Prefecture, miles away from the neon lights of Muzidafu. Izuku checked his pockets. He had his wallet, his student ID, and a thermos of tea. He walked to the train station. He didn't look back at the school. He didn't look back at the smoke rising from the incinerator. The moth had stopped beating its wings. It was time to find a place to rest. The journey took 2 days. Izuku spent the entirety of his savings on train tickets, and a bus fare that took him to the edge of civilization. From there, he walked. The mountain was not forgiving. It was steep, covered in dense foliage that smelled of pine needles and damp earth. The air grew thinner, colder. The sounds of the city, the cars, the sirens, the constant hum of electricity, faded away, replaced by the rustle of wind through the trees and the crunch of gravel under his loafers. His school shoes were ruined. His uniform was torn by brambles. He was hungry, thirsty, and his legs felt like lead. But his mind was strangely quiet. For the first time in his life, he wasn't muttering. He was just breathing. In. Out. Step. Step. He found the temple at sunset on the second day. It was smaller than he expected. A wooden structure that seemed to grow out of the cliffside itself, its timber gray with age and covered in patches of vibrant green moss. There was no grand gate, no statue of a guardian deity. Just a stone path leading to a sliding paper door. Izuku collapsed on the stone steps, his chest heaving. The door slid open. A figure stepped out. He was short, perhaps even shorter than Izuku. He wore a simple, coarse robe of faded brown. His head was shaved, revealing a scalp map of wrinkles and sunspots. He held a broom made of twigs. The man looked at the boy collapsed on his doorstep. He didn't rush to help. He didn't ask if he was okay. He simply leaned on his broom and sighed. "We are not buying any cookies," the old man rasped. His voice sounded like dry leaves scraping together. Izuku forced himself up. His legs shook violently. He bowed deeply, his forehead nearly touching the stone. Izuku's voice cracked. He hadn't spoken in 2 days. "I have nowhere else to go." The old man peered at him. His eyes were milky, clouded with cataracts, yet he seemed to look right through Izuku's skin, past his ribs, and into the terrified rhythm of his heart. "You are loud," the old man said. Izuku blinked, confused. I didn't say anything else." Your spirit, the man said, tapping his own chest. It screams. It wails like a child who has dropped his ice cream. It disturbs the moss. I want to stop the screaming, Izuku whispered. Please. Teach me. Teach you what? The man turned away, sweeping a speck of dust from the porch. I have no quirks to give you, boy. I have no secret techniques to make you blast fire or punch through steel. This is a place for sleeping and sweeping. Go home. I don't want to punch steel, Izuku cried out. The outburst surprised even him. I spent my whole life watching people punch steel. I spent my whole life watching the strong crush the weak and call it heroism. I don't want that. The old man paused his sweeping. Then what do you want? Izuku looked at his hands. They were scarred from years of notebook scribbling, from explosions, from falling down. I want to be strong enough to save people, Izuku said, his voice trembling but firm. But I want to do it without becoming the thing I hate. I want peace. The old man stood silent for a long time. The wind howled through the valley, rustling the wind chimes hanging from the eaves. Finally, the man turned back. My name is Jen, he said. Take off those ridiculous shoes. You will clean the steps. Then, you will clean the floor. Then, you will clean the pots. If you speak one word before sunrise tomorrow, I will throw you off the mountain. Izuku kicked off his loafers. Yes, Mas. Jen raised the broom threateningly. Izuku clamped his mouth shut. He picked up a rag from a bucket of rainwater near the door and fell to his knees. He began to scrub. Year 1, the stone. The first year was agony. Master Jen was not a kind teacher. He was a tyrant of silence. He did not teach Izuku martial arts. He did not teach him philosophy. He taught him labor. Izuku woke at 4 a.m. He ran down the mountain path to the river, filled 2 buckets with water, and carried them back up. The path was 2 miles long. If he spilled a drop, Jen would pour the buckets out and point back down the hill. Then came the wood chopping. Then the cleaning. Then the gardening. For the first 3 months, Izuku's body broke. Every muscle fiber tore and rebuilt itself. His hands blistered, calloused, peeled, and calloused again until his palms felt like leather. He tried to mutter. Old habits died hard. While scrubbing the floor, he would start whispering about the structural integrity of the wood or the chemical composition of the cleaning wax. Thwack! Jen's bamboo cane would rap against Izuku's shoulder. Not hard enough to bruise, but sharp enough to sting. The mind talks because it is afraid of silence, Jen would say, sitting in the corner, drinking tea. You fill the air with words because you are afraid that if you stop, you will disappear. You are not that important, Izuku. The world will spin without your commentary. Be quiet. Be the stone. So, Izuku learned to be the stone. He learned to exist without imposing his will on the world. He learned that if he fought the weight of the water buckets, his back would break. But if he aligned his spine, engaged his core, and breathed with the weight, the buckets became lighter. He stopped analyzing heroes. He stopped thinking about All Might. He started analyzing the way the wind moved through the trees. He analyzed how a cat moved when it jumped, silent, efficient, wasting 0 energy. By the end of the first year, Izuku Midoriya was unrecognizable. The baby fat was gone, replaced by whipcord muscle that clung tight to his bones. He wasn't bulky like a bodybuilder. He was dense, like packed earth. He wrote a letter to his mother once a month. He told her he was safe. He told her he was learning. He didn't tell her that he hadn't spoken to another human being other than Jen in 12 months. Year 2, the river. Hit me, Jen said. It was the first day of the second year. They were standing in the small courtyard of the temple. The snow was deep, but Izuku stood barefoot, feeling the cold seep into his soles, grounding him. Master? Izuku asked. His voice was deeper now, rarely used, and smooth. You have built the vessel, Jen said, tapping Izuku's chest with his cane. Now we must fill it. Hit me. Izuku hesitated. Violence was contrary to everything he had sought here. But obedience was the first rule. He threw a punch, a clumsy, telegraphed right hook he had seen Bakugo use 1,000 times. Jen didn't block. He didn't dodge. He simply shifted his weight. He stepped inside Izuku's guard, placed a hand on Izuku's wrist, and turned. The world flipped. Izuku slammed into the snow, the wind knocked out of him. He hadn't felt Gen use any strength. It felt like tripping over a root. You fight like a child throwing a tantrum, Gen sighed. You throw your anger at me. Anger is heavy. It makes you slow. How do I fight without anger? Izuku gasped, spitting out snow. How do I fight without wanting to hurt? You do not fight to hurt, Gen corrected. You fight to restore balance. If a rock rolls down a hill, do you hate the rock? No. You step aside. You guide it to a stop. Violence is an imbalance of energy. Your job is not to create more violence, but to ground it. To nullify it. Thus began the training of the soft palm. Gen taught him a mixture of Aikido, Judo, and something much older, an art based on the flow of ki, or bioenergy. Izuku learned that every person has a center of gravity, a rhythm of breathing, and a mental state. If you controlled the center, you controlled the body. If you disrupted the breathing, you disrupted the power. If you remained calm while they raged, you controlled the mind. They spent hours meditating under waterfalls, freezing the panic out of Izuku's system. They spent days blindfolded, Izuku learning to sense the displacement of air to dodge acorns Gen threw at him. He learned to breathe. Not just to oxygenate his blood, but to control his heart rate. He could slow his pulse to a crawl. He could flood his muscles with oxygen for bursts of speed. He learned the philosophy of ahimsa, nonviolence. To save a person, Gen taught him one evening by the fire, you must sometimes save them from themselves. A villain is a person in pain, lashing out. If you break his bones, you add to his pain. If you stop him without pain, you break his cycle. But what if they are too strong? Izuku asked, staring into the flames. What if they are like All Might? Gen smiled, a rare, toothless expression. The typhoon is strong, Izuku. It tears up trees and destroys houses. But the typhoon cannot hurt the wind. Be the wind. Let the typhoon pass through you, and when it is tired, it will dissipate. Year 3, the return. The third year was application. Izuku sparred with Gen daily. At first, he spent most of the time face down in the dirt. But slowly, the gap closed. Izuku stopped trying to win. He stopped trying to hit. He started to flow. When Gen struck, Izuku was already moving. He would catch the old man's wrist, not to crush it, but to guide it past his head. He would sweep Gen's legs, but catch him by the collar before he hit the ground, lowering him gently. It was a dance. A martial art of absolute kindness. One morning, 2 weeks before the UA entrance exam, Gen attacked Izuku while he was meditating. It was a vicious strike with the cane, aimed right at Izuku's temple. Izuku didn't open his eyes. He raised his left hand, caught the cane mid-swing, absorbed the vibration through his arm, grounded it through his spine into the floorboards, and exhaled. The cane snapped in half. Silence filled the room. Izuku opened his eyes. He bowed. I'm sorry about your cane, master. Gen looked at the broken wood. He looked at Izuku, 15 years old, scarred, callous, but with eyes as clear and calm as a mountain lake. You are ready, Gen said softly. Ready for what? To go back to the noise. Izuku felt a pang of fear. The mountain was safe. The city was chaos. I don't know if I can, Izuku admitted. Then everything you learned here is a lie, Gen said sternly. A ship is safe in the harbor, Izuku, but that is not what ships are for. You wanted to be a hero. You wanted to save them. Go. Save them. Gen handed him a package. Inside was a new set of clothes. Loose, dark green hakama pants, durable and flexible. A fitted white shirt. And a long, sturdy staff made of polished oak. It is not a sword, Gen said. It is a walking stick. To help others when they stumble. Izuku dressed. He packed his meager belongings. He knelt before Gen and pressed his forehead to the floor one last time. Thank you, master. Don't thank me, Gen grunted, turning his back. Just don't get loud. The city of screams. Muzurifu had not changed, but Izuku had. The sensory overload hit him the moment he stepped off the train. The smells of exhaust, frying grease, and perfume. The visual riot of neon signs and quirks activating in public. The sheer density of humanity. 3 years ago, Izuku would have shrunk into himself. he would have hunched his shoulders and tried to disappear. Now, he walked down the center of the platform. His back was straight, his gait fluid. He held his staff loosely in his right hand. People parted for him. They didn't know why. He wasn't big, he wasn't menacing. But he carried an aura of stillness that acted like a force field in the chaotic crowd. He was on his way to his mother's apartment. He needed to see her before the exam. He needed to apologize for the distance, to show her that her broken boy had fixed himself. He took the shortcut through the underpass. It was a mistake. Or perhaps destiny. As he walked into the shadow of the tunnel, the manhole cover rattled. A sludge-like substance oozed out, forming into a grotesque, liquid shape with manic, bulging eyes. A medium-sized invisibility cloak. The villain hissed, his voice wet and gurgling. Izuku stopped. He didn't gasp. He didn't scream. He simply planted his feet, shoulder-width apart. The villain lunged. "I'll take over your body, kid. It'll only hurt for 45 seconds. The sludge slammed into Izuku. It forced its way into his mouth, his nose. It wrapped around his limbs, lifting him off the ground. Suffocation, Izuku's mind registered. Oxygen deprivation. Panic response imminent. No. Izuku closed his eyes. Panic burns oxygen. Fear spikes the heart rate. Slow down. Inside the sludge, Izuku went limp. To the villain, it looked like the boy had given up instantly. "That's right, just let it happen," the villain laughed. But inside, Izuku was executing the breathing of the dormant bear. He slowed his heart rate to 40 beats per minute. He relaxed every muscle fiber to minimize oxygen consumption. He didn't fight the sludge, he accepted it. By relaxing, his body became heavy. Dead weight. The villain struggled to hold him up. Izuku felt the fluid dynamics of the villain's body. He felt the solids, the eyes, the teeth, floating in the liquid. He waited. 3, 2, 1. Izuku's eyes snapped open. He didn't punch. He expanded. He inhaled sharply, his diaphragm expanding with the force of a bellows, and flexed every muscle in his body outward simultaneously in a ki, a spirit shout. But since his mouth was covered, the sound became a vibration. The sudden expansion and vibration sent a shockwave through the sludge. It wasn't enough to blow the villain apart, but it disrupted his cohesion. The sludge loosened for a fraction of a second. That was all Izuku needed. He brought his knee up to his chest and kicked out, not at the villain, but at the tunnel wall. The force propelled him backward, ripping him free from the loosened grip of the slime. Izuku landed on his feet, skidding back on the concrete. He coughed, expelling the sludge from his airway, and immediately leveled his staff. "You should surrender," Izuku rasped, his voice calm despite the raw throat. "This form is unstable. You are expending too much energy maintaining your viscosity." The villain stared at him, baffled. "What the hell? You slippery little rat!" The villain gathered himself for a second strike. He lashed out with a tendril of sludge like a whip. Izuku didn't block. He stepped to the side, pivoting on one foot. The sludge whip cracked the pavement where he had been standing. Izuku spun his staff, catching the underside of the sludge tendril and flicking it upward, unbalancing the liquid mass. "I do not wish to hurt you," Izuku said. "But I will immobilize you. Die!" The villain shrieked. Before the villain could launch a second attack, the manhole cover flew into the air. "Fear not!" The voice boomed like thunder, shaking the very foundations of the tunnel. "For I am here!" All Might stood at the entrance of the tunnel. He was massive, a titan of muscle and shadow, his smile shining like a beacon. He pulled back a fist. "Texas!" Izuku saw the air pressure building. He saw the villain's eyes widen in terror. Smash! The wind pressure was catastrophic. It hit the sludge villain like a freight train. The liquid body exploded, splattering against the walls, the ceiling, the floor. The wind threatened to blow Izuku away too. Izuku slammed the butt of his staff into the ground, rooting himself. He lowered his center of gravity, bowing into the wind, letting the gale force wash over him like water over a stone. When the wind died down, silence returned to the tunnel. The villain was scattered, unconscious, reduced to puddles. All Might stood tall, steam rising from his body. He looked around, expecting to see a terrified teenager crying on the floor. Instead, he saw a boy in strange, monk-like robes. The boy was kneeling beside a pile of unconscious sludge. All Might blinked. "Young man! Are you already safe? Excellent. I apologize for getting you caught up in my justice ing." Izuku didn't look up immediately. He had 2 fingers pressed against the sludge, where the villain's eye was floating. "He is alive," Izuku said softly. "His pulse is erratic, but stable." All Might's smile faltered for a fraction of a second. Excuse me?" Izuku stood up. He pulled a handkerchief from his pocket and wiped the sludge from his face. Then, he turned to the symbol of peace. 3 years ago, Izuku would have fainted. He would have asked for an autograph. He would have screamed. Now, he looked at All Might with a deep, analytical sadness. He saw the hero's strength, yes. But with his heightened senses, honed by years of meditation, Izuku saw something else. He saw the tremor in All Might's left hand. He heard the wheeze hidden beneath the laughter. He felt the desperate, frantic energy of a man running on fumes. He is in pain, Izuku thought. He is a mountain that is crumbling from the inside. Izuku bowed low, a perfect, respectful angle. "Thank you for your assistance, All Might-san. Your control of air pressure is remarkable." All Might laughed, a boisterous sound that echoed a bit too loudly. "Ha ha! It is all in a day's work. But you, young man! You survived quite a while. Do you have a quirk that lets you breathe underwater?" "No," Izuku said, straightening up. "I am quirkless." The silence that followed was heavy. All Might stiffened. "I see," All Might said, his voice dropping an octave. "Well, that makes your bravery even more impressive. Now, I must get this villain to the police." All Might began frantically scooping the sludge into empty soda bottles he had in his grocery bag. It was a frantic, undignified sight. Izuku watched him. He stepped forward. "Allow me." "No need. I am fast." "You are shaking," Izuku said. All Might froze. Izuku knelt beside him. He didn't act like a fan. He acted like a medic. He picked up a bottle and began to help scoop the sludge, his movements precise and calm. "Your energy is turbulent," Izuku said quietly, not looking at the hero. "You are holding on to something heavy. If you do not put it down occasionally, it will crush you." All Might stared at the boy. He had met millions of fans. He had met politicians, kings, and other heroes. But no one had ever looked at him and seen him. They only saw the symbol. This boy saw the man. "Who are you?" All Might whispered, dropping the persona for a second. Izuku finished filling the bottle and capped it tight. He handed it to All Might. "I am Izuku Midoriya," he said. "I am just a student on the path." All Might took the bottle. He looked at the boy's eyes, green, deep, and devoid of fear. "Well, young Midoriya." All Might stood up, forcing the smile back onto his face, though it looked strained. "Thank you for the help. Stay safe. Stay out of trouble." All Might launched himself into the sky with a sonic boom. Izuku watched him go. He watched the hero disappear into the clouds, leaving a trail of displaced air. "He is suffering," Izuku murmured to the empty tunnel. He picked up his staff. He checked his watch. He was going to be late for dinner with his mother. The moth in his mind was silent. But for the first time in 3 years, Izuku felt a spark of the old desire. Not to be like All Might, but to help him. To save the savior, Izuku thought, starting his walk home. That will require a very strong piece. The reunion. Inko Midoriya was chopping carrots when the doorbell rang. She jumped, nearly dropping the knife. She had been on edge all day. Today was the day. The letter had said he would return today. She rushed to the door, wiping her hands on her apron. She took a deep breath. What will he look like? Is he hurt? Did he eat enough? She opened the door. She had to look up. The boy standing there was not the small, trembling child she had sent away. He was taller, broader. His jawline was defined. He wore strange clothes that smelled of pine and incense. But it was his face that stopped her heart. The anxiety, the constant twitching, the tears, they were gone. "Tadaima, Mom," Izuku said softly. Inko burst into tears. "Izuku!" She flung herself at him. Izuku didn't stumble. He caught her. He wrapped his arms around her, holding her steady. He felt her shaking. He felt her guilt and her love. "I'm home," he whispered, resting his chin on her head. "I'm okay. You don't have to worry anymore." Inko pulled back, cupping his face. "You look so different. You look so grown up." "I learned a lot," Izuku smiled. It was a small smile, but it reached his eyes. Are you still going to try for UA?" she asked, fear creeping into her voice. "Without a quirk?" Izuku stepped into the Genkin, removing his sandals. He placed his staff in the umbrella stand. "Yes," he said, "but Izuku, it's dangerous. You could get hurt." "The other kids?" Izuku turned to her. He took her hands in his. His palms were rough, calloused, and warm. "Mom," he said firmly, "I am not going there to fight them. I am going there to show them that there is another way. Violence isn't the only form of strength." He squeezed her hands. "I promise you. I will not break." Inko looked at her son. She searched for the fragility she had always tried to protect. She couldn't find it. She saw only a mountain. "Okay," she whispered, wiping her eyes. "Okay. Welcome home, Izuku." 1 week later, the entrance. The gates of UA High School were massive. They were designed to intimidate. Hundreds of students streamed through them. Some were levitating. Some had engines in their legs. Some were made of rock. The air buzzed with nervous energy and arrogance. Izuku walked through the crowd. He wore his new monk-styled uniform, the standard UA gray jacket, but customized with Hakama-style trousers that allowed for full range of motion. He carried nothing but a pencil case. "Out of my way, extras!" The voice was unmistakable. Katsuki Bakugo stomped through the crowd, radiating heat. People scrambled to get out of his path. Izuku didn't scramble. He continued his steady pace. Bakugo stopped. He saw the green hair. He saw the straight back. "Deku?" Bakugo growled. Izuku stopped. He turned. Bakugo's eyes narrowed. He hadn't seen Izuku in 3 years. He expected the nerd to be dead, or working at a convenience store. He didn't expect this. Izuku looked calm. "Bored even?" "Hello, Kaken," Izuku said. "Where the hell have you been?" Bakugo snarled, stepping into Izuku's personal space. Smoke curled from his palms. "I thought you died in a ditch." "I went for a walk," Izuku said simply. "You think you can just waltz in here?" Bakugo grabbed Izuku's collar. "You're quirkless. You're a pebble. Get out of my sight before I blast you to Kingdom Come." The old Izuku would have stuttered. The old Izuku would have flinched. Izuku looked at Bakugo's hand on his collar. Then he looked at Bakugo's eyes. "You are holding a hot coal, Kaken," Izuku said softly. "Ha! Anger," Izuku explained. "You hold it tight, waiting to throw it at me. But you are the one getting burned." Bakugo's eye twitched. "What kind of hippie crap are you spouting?" He wound up his other arm for an explosion. Izuku didn't block. He simply placed his hand over Bakugo's smoking palm. Contact. Izuku felt the sweat build up. He felt the ignition spark. With a speed that defied logic, Izuku twisted his hip and slid his hand down Bakugo's wrist. He pressed a pressure point on the inside of the forearm. Bakugo's hand went numb. The explosion fizzled out into a harmless puff of smoke. "What the?" Izuku gently removed Bakugo's hand from his collar. "Save your energy for the exam," Izuku said, stepping back. "You will need it." He bowed slightly, then turned and walked away toward the exam hall. Bakugo stood frozen in the middle of the crowd. He stared at his hand. He stared at Izuku's retreating back. For the first time in his life, Katsuki Bakugo didn't know what to say. The pebble hadn't moved. The pebble had become a mountain, and Bakugo had the sinking feeling that no amount of explosions was going to move it. Izuku walked into the darkness of the auditorium, the ghost of a smile on his face. The moth was gone. The meditation was over. The test began now. The steam that rolled off the deflating form of All Might was not just heat. It was the physical manifestation of a lie dissolving. Izuku Midoriya stood on the rooftop of a nondescript office building in downtown Mizurufu. The sun was beginning to dip, painting the sky in bruises of purple and orange. The winds were high here, whipping at the hem of his monk's robes, but Izuku stood rooted, his staff held loosely in his right hand. Before him, the titan of justice, the symbol of peace, the man whose smile was printed on lunchboxes and billboards across the nation, had vanished. In his place stood a skeletal figure. The man was gaunt, his eyes sunken into deep, shadowed sockets, his limbs spindly and trembling. He coughed, and a spray of blood painted the concrete. A normal fan would have screamed. A normal teenager would have pulled out a phone, or fainted, or demanded to know where the real hero had gone. Izuku simply reached into his satchel. "You are leaking life force," Izuku said. His voice was not an accusation, but an observation. The skeletal man wiped his mouth, looking at Izuku with a mixture of shame and wariness. I know. It's a lot to take in, kid. I didn't want you to see this. The symbol of peace isn't supposed to bleed." Izuku didn't respond immediately. He sat down on the concrete, crossing his legs into a lotus position. He unscrewed the top of his thermos. Steam curled up, smelling of roasted barley and earthy matcha. He poured a cup. "Sit," Izuku said, gesturing to the space opposite him. "Kid, I don't think you understand." "I understand that you have pushed your vessel beyond its limits," Izuku interrupted gently. He held out the cup. "Sit. Drink. The tea helps ground the spirit when the body is failing." The man hesitated. He looked at the cup, then at the boy's eerily calm green eyes. With a heavy sigh that rattled in his chest, the man collapsed into a sitting position. He took the cup. His large, bony hands swallowed the small vessel. "I'm Toshinori Yagi," the man muttered, taking a sip. The warmth hit his stomach, and for a moment, the trembling in his hands ceased. "But yes. I am All Might." "You are both," Izuku said. "And neither." Toshinori blinked. "That's a bit deep for a junior high student. I have spent the last 3 years listening to trees grow and sweeping dust from empty rooms," Izuku replied, pouring himself a cup. "You learn to see past the surface. When I looked at you in the tunnel, All Might-san, I didn't see a hero. I saw a man drowning in a river of his own making." Toshinori winced. He pulled up his shirt. The scar was a spiderweb of mangled flesh, a crater on the left side of his torso where his stomach and respiratory system had once been. It was an ugly, violent thing, a testament to a battle that should have ended him. 5 years ago, Toshinori said, his voice raspy. "A villain did this to me. Half my respiratory organs were destroyed. I lost my whole stomach. Repeated surgeries have worn me down. I can only do hero work for about 3 hours a day now. The rest of the time, I look like this." He looked at Izuku, expecting revulsion. Izuku leaned forward and inspected the scar. He didn't touch it, but he hovered his hand over it, sensing the heat, the disrupted flow of energy. "It is a wound of great violence," Izuku murmured. "But the greater wound is in your eyes." Toshinori pulled his shirt down. "My eyes? You are afraid," Izuku said. "Not of dying. You are afraid of the silence that will come after you are gone. You hold up the sky atlas, but your shoulders are breaking, and you are terrified that when you drop it, the world will be crushed." Toshinori stared at the boy. The tea in his cup had gone cold, but he didn't notice. This boy, this child, was dissecting his soul with the precision of a surgeon. "I have to be the symbol," Toshinori whispered, his grip tightening on the cup. "The world needs a pillar. If I show weakness, the villains will rise. Chaos will return." I smiled to hide the fear. I smiled to show them that everything is fine. "But, it's getting heavy." "A pillar is a poor choice for a foundation," Izuku said, taking a sip of his tea. "If you chip a pillar, the roof collapses. A mountain has a wide base. It supports the sky with its mass, not its height. You are trying to be a pillar, alone. That is why you are breaking." Toshinori laughed, a dry, hacking sound. "You talk like an old man, young Midoriya. But you're right. I am running out of time." He looked at Izuku. Really looked at him. He saw the bravery in the sludge tunnel. The way the boy had moved, fluid, water-like, negating the villain's force rather than meeting it. He saw the compassion in his eyes now. This wasn't a fan seeking glory. This was a healer seeking to cure a sickness. "Young Midoriya," Toshinori said, his voice gaining a sudden gravity. "You said you are quirkless." "I am, and yet you jumped in when the pros stood back. You faced a monster with nothing but a stick and your breath. Tashinori set the cup down. I have been looking for a successor. Someone to inherit my power, my quirk. Izuku tilted his head. Inherit? Quirks are genetic. They are not heirlooms. Mine is, Tashinori said. He raised his hand, clenching it into a fist. It is a sacred torch, passed down from generation to generation. One cultivates the power, then passes it to the next. The name of this ability is One for All. One for All. Izuku tested the words. A union of spirits. Exactly. It is the crystallization of power. The strength to save the world. The strength to smash through evil. Tashinori leaned forward, his blue eyes burning with intensity. I have been watching the students at UA. I have been watching the pros. But none of them have what you have. You have the heart of a hero. The instinct to move before you think. Tashinori extended a hand. Izuku Midoriya. I want you to accept my power. I want you to become the next symbol of peace. The wind howled across the roof. It was the moment every child in Japan dreamed of. To be chosen by All Might. To be given the ultimate power. Izuku looked at the hand. He looked at the scarred man offering it. He closed his eyes. He took a deep breath, centering himself. No, Izuku said. The silence that followed was absolute. Tashinori's jaw actually dropped. Excuse me? I cannot accept it, Izuku said calmly. I am honored, All Might-san. Truly. But your power, it is a power of violence. Violence? Tashinori sputtered. It's the power of justice. Is there a difference? Izuku asked. I watched you today. You saved me with a punch that changed the weather. It was magnificent. But it was also destructive. You smashed the villain. You scattered him. You rely on overwhelming force to subjugate your enemies. Izuku stood up, brushing dust from his hakama. My path is the path of ahimsa. Non-violence. I have spent 3 years learning to redirect force, not create it. To accept One for All would be to accept a weapon of mass destruction into my body. It would corrupt my path. I do not wish to smash, All Might-san. I wish to heal. Tashinori stood up, his skeletal frame trembling. You think you can save the world with tea and sympathy? Kid, the world is cruel. There are monsters out there who won't stop because you ask them nicely. There are villains like the one who gave me this scar. If you don't have the power to stop them, people die. Innocents die. I know, Izuku said softly. I know the world is cruel. That is why I must not be. Then how will you save them? Tashinori demanded. When a building is falling, you need strength to catch it. When a villain is about to kill a child, you need speed to stop him. One for All isn't just a punch. It's the physical capacity to make a difference. You have the spirit, Midoriya, but without power, your ideals are just dreams. Izuku paused. He looked at his hands. He remembered the sludge villain. He remembered the feeling of helplessness as the liquid forced its way down his throat. He remembered Master Gen saying, a ship is safe in the harbor, but that is not what ships are for. He remembered the sensation of All Might's wind pressure. It was destructive, yes. But it had also blown away the despair, strength to catch a falling building. Izuku mused. Yes. All Might stepped closer. It is a stockpile of power. How you use it is up to you. I use it to smash because that is who I am. I am a hammer. But you... All Might pointed at Izuku's chest. You don't have to be a hammer. You can be... I don't know, a really strong net? A shield? Izuku looked up. A shield. One for All amplifies the body, Tashinori explained, sensing an opening. It makes you faster than sound. It makes your skin harder than steel. You say you want to redirect force? Imagine if you had the strength to redirect a hurricane. Imagine if you could move fast enough to pull every person out of a fire without ever fighting the flames. Izuku's mind raced. He thought of his Aikido. The principle was to use the opponent's energy. But there were limits. If a train was coming at him, he couldn't redirect a train. His body was too small, his mass too light. But with One for All, he could become the immovable object. He could become the wind that guides the storm. I would not use it to strike, Izuku said firmly. I would never use it to hurt. That is your choice, Toshinori promised. The power is just energy. It has no will of its own. It takes the shape of the vessel. Izuku looked at the setting sun. He thought of the moth in the jar. He thought of the crying child he used to be. I will accept your burden, Izuku said, bowing deeply. But I will not be your symbol of peace. I will not be a pillar. Toshinori blinked. Then what will you be? Izuku straightened, his eyes clear. I will be the sanctuary. I will be the place where people are safe. I will not defeat the villains. I will render their violence meaningless. Toshinori smiled. It wasn't the practiced grin of all might. It was a genuine, tired, hopeful smile. The sanctuary, Toshinori mused. I like the sound of that. The beach of lost things. Dagoba Municipal Beach Park was a graveyard. It was a stretch of coastline that had been forgotten by the city, a dumping ground for the unwanted detritus of modern life. Rusted refrigerators, tires, broken cars, and mountains of plastic drifted in the currents and washed ashore, choking the sand. This, Toshinori announced, standing atop a pile of tires in his skeletal form, is your first trial. Izuku stood on the sidewalk, surveying the mess. The smell was pungent, rot, rust, and salt. You have a vessel, Toshinori said, holding up a piece of paper entitled The American Dream Plan. But it is a vessel built for endurance, not capacity. One for all is volatile. If you took it now, your limbs would likely explode. Izuku raised an eyebrow. Explode? Pop like water balloons, Toshinori said cheerfully. So, we must build your body. You will clean this entire beach in 10 months. This will build the necessary muscle mass to hold the power. He handed Izuku the schedule. It was brutal. Weightlifting, sprinting, hauling heavy machinery. Izuku looked at the schedule. Then he looked at the beach. No, Izuku said. Toshinori faltered. No? But the exploding limbs? I will clean the beach, Izuku said, folding the paper and tucking it into his sleeve. But I will not do it like this. You treat the trash as an enemy to be removed. You treat the body as a machine to be hammered into shape. Izuku walked down the stairs to the sand. He approached a rusted washing machine that was half buried in the muck. He placed a hand on it. This machine once washed a family's clothes, Izuku murmured. It had a purpose. Now it is forgotten. It has a spirit, All Might-san. Everything does. Toshinori scratched his head. Okay, so you're going to talk to the trash? I am going to honor it, Izuku said. And in doing so, I will honor myself. The training began. It was unlike anything All Might had ever seen. Izuku did not frantically haul trash. He didn't run screaming with tires on his back. He moved with the slow, deliberate grace of a calligraphy brush. He created zones. He cleared a central space in the sand, raking it into perfect, concentric circles using a piece of driftwood. This was his staging ground. When he moved a refrigerator, he didn't just lift it. He squatted deep, aligning his breath with the exertion. Inhale. Grip. Exhale. Lift. He moved the heavy object with a fluid motion, carrying it not with his back, but with his center of gravity. He placed it gently in the designated pile, stacking it with geometric precision alongside others to form a stable cube. He turned the cleanup into a massive, moving meditation. Month 1, Izuku cleared the small debris. He spent hours in a squatting position, picking up plastic bottles and glass shards. His legs burned, but his face remained impassive. He was training his patience. Month 3, he moved to the tires. He didn't just throw them. He stacked them into intricate towers, balancing them perfectly. He jumped from tire to tire, training his balance. All Might watched as Izuku stood on one leg atop a 10-foot tower of tires, eyes closed, meditating while the sea breeze tried to knock him down. Month 6, the heavy machinery. This was where the strength training truly kicked in. Izuku tied ropes around ruined cars. But instead of just dragging them, he used his soft palm techniques. He found the fulcrum points. He used leverage. He pulled with his entire skeletal structure, integrating his breath with the movement. He's not building glamour muscles, Toshinori realized, watching Izuku guide a truck frame across the sand. He's building density. He's knitting his fascia and tendons into steel cables. Month 9, the beach was unrecognizable. It wasn't just clean. It was beautiful. The trash that remained, waiting for municipal pickup, was arranged in artistic structures. A pyramid of rusted metal. A spiral of old tires. The sand around them was raked into Zen patterns, rippling like water. The sun was setting on the final day of the 10th month. Izuku stood in the center of the clean beach. He was shirtless. His body was a map of discipline. He wasn't bulky like All Might. He was compact, defined, and incredibly dense. Every muscle was visible, but they looked like carved wood rather than pumped balloons. Scars from his mountain training crisscrossed his back. Toshinori walked down the stairs. He looked at the pristine horizon, the golden light reflecting off the water. Holy stinking super crap, Toshinori whispered. You actually did it. And you made it, Art? Izuku turned. He was sweating, his chest heaving slightly, but his breath was rhythmic. The external reflects the internal, Izuku said. By clearing the beach, I have cleared the vessel. Toshinori nodded. He reached up and plucked a single, long blonde hair from his head. Then it is time, Toshinori said. He held the hair out. Izuku looked at it. This is the ceremony? Izuku asked. It is, Toshinori said seriously. Eat this. Izuku stared. A long silence stretched between them, broken only by the sound of seagulls. It must be ingested? DNA transfer, Toshinori explained, looking a little embarrassed. It's the fastest way, Izuku sighed. He didn't complain. He didn't make a face. He simply bowed to the hair. It is a gift, Izuku said solemnly. I receive it with gratitude. He took the hair. He walked over to his thermos, poured a cup of tea, placed the hair in the cup, swirled it around, and drank it in one smooth motion. Toshinori blinked. That was weirdly dignified for eating hair. It is done, Izuku said, setting the cup down. Do I feel it now? It takes a few hours to digest and merge with your system, Toshinori said. Go home, young Midoriya. Sleep. Tomorrow is the entrance exam. And tomorrow, you will feel the fire, the inner storm. That night, Izuku dreamt of a storm. He was standing in a void, surrounded by darkness. But the darkness was alive. It swirled with colors, red, yellow, black, white, purple. He heard voices. Screaming. Laughing. Crying. Smash it. Save them. Power. Run. A torrent of energy slammed into him. It wasn't a river. It was a tsunami. It felt like sticking a fork into a power outlet, while standing in a bucket of water. In the canon timeline, Izuku Midoriya would have been terrified. He would have flailed. But the Izuku of the verdant path did not flail. Anchor, he thought. In the dream, he sat down. He visualized the mountain. The energy crashed over him. It burned. It tried to tear his mind apart with the sheer volume of history and power it contained. 8 generations of desperate struggle were trying to inhabit his body all at once. Too loud, Izuku thought. He breathed. In the dream, he exhaled a cloud of white mist. Soft palm, spirit redirection. He visualized the energy not as a force hitting him, but as a force flowing around him. He built a mental water wheel. He let the torrent hit the wheel, spinning it, generating power, but letting the water flow through. The voices quieted. The tsunami calmed into a fast-moving river. He felt the presence of others. Shadows standing in the mist. Watching him. One of them, a figure with wild hair and goggles, seemed to lean forward. Interesting, the shadow seemed to say. Izuku opened his eyes. It was morning. His alarm was ringing. He sat up in bed. He looked at his hand. Veins of red energy crackled across his skin for a second, then vanished. He clenched his fist. The air pressure in the room dropped. The curtains rustled. One for all, he whispered. It felt like he had swallowed a star. It was heavy. It was hot. It wanted to be released. It wanted to explode. Quiet, Izuku commanded the power. The energy hummed, submissive but vibrating. He got out of bed. He moved through his morning kata. Usually his movements were silent. Today, every time he moved his arm, the air snapped. He was moving too fast. He was putting too much torque into his steps. He cracked a floorboard just by pivoting. Adjustment required, Izuku noted. The vessel is overflowing. I must open the valves only a fraction. He closed his eyes. He imagined the valve of the power. It was at 100%. If he punched now, he would destroy the apartment complex. He dialed it down. 50%. Still too much. 20%. The bones ache. 10%. Better. 5%. At 5%, the hum became a pleasant buzz. It felt like a strong cup of coffee. He felt light. He felt durable. Full cowl, he whispered, adopting the name he had meditated on. Serenity. A faint, green lightning flickered around his body. It was soft, barely visible, like fireflies in the mist. He picked up his staff. It felt light as a feather. I am ready. The gates of judgment. The practical exam arena was a mock city. It was huge, towering, and filled with robotic villains. Izuku stood at the starting gate of Battle Center B. He was surrounded by other examinees. They were stretching, hyping themselves up, checking their support gear. Izuku stood perfectly still. He held his staff upright, eyes closed, listening to the gears grinding in the distance. Hey! You! Izuku opened one eye. A tall boy with glasses and engines in his calves was marching toward him. Tenya Ida, you are obstructing the flow of traffic and your humming is distracting. Ida chopped his hands in the air. Also, you are wearing robes. This is a hero exam, not a costume party. If you are here to make light of this institution, you should leave. Izuku looked at him. He smiled gently. The clothes do not make the hero, Izuku said. And I am humming to calm the spirit of the earth. It is anxious today. Too many explosions. Ida stared at him, baffled. The spirit of the what? Start. Present mixed voice boomed over the speakers. What are you waiting for? There are no countdowns in real battles. Go! 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 The crowd surged forward. A stampede of quirks. Explosions, lasers, engines. Izuku didn't run. He inhaled. He activated full cowl, serenity. The green sparks flickered. He took one step. Boom! The ground beneath his sandal cracked. He was gone. He moved faster than the eye could follow. He wasn't running. He was gliding. The 5% boost to his already honed leg muscles propelled him forward at 50 miles per hour. He bypassed the crowd in seconds. He was the first one into the city. A one-pointer robot rounded the corner. It was a massive wheel with arms, targeting him. Target acquired. It lunged. Izuku didn't break stride. He ran up the wall of the building next to it. As the robot smashed into the wall, missing him, Izuku pushed off the brickwork. He dropped down behind the robot. He hooked his staff into the exposed wiring at the robot's neck joint. He didn't smash it. He didn't punch it. He used the robot's own momentum against it. As the robot turned, Izuku planted his feet and pulled the staff with a sharp, precise jerk. Snap! The main power coupling disconnected. The robot powered down instantly, slumping to the ground with a mechanical groan. Izuku landed softly on the hood of the robot. He bowed to it. Rest now, he whispered. 6 points. Present Mike yelled, though nobody knew how he got them without an explosion. Izuku moved on. The exam was a chaotic swirl of violence. Students were blasting robots apart, sending shrapnel flying. Izuku moved through the battlefield like a ghost. He saw a 3-pointer about to fire missiles at a student who was stuck in debris. The student screamed. Izuku appeared. He didn't attack the robot. He grabbed the student, a girl with vines for hair, and pulled her out of the way just as the missiles hit the ground. Are you unhurt? Izuku asked, setting her down. Yes. Thank you. Ibara Shiozaki stared at him. She felt a strange kinship with this boy. He radiated peace. Good. Seek cover. Izuku turned back to the robot. It leveled its guns at him. Izuku spun his staff. Violence begets violence. But rust is inevitable. He dashed. He didn't hit the armor. He hit the joints. He tapped the hydraulic knees with a precise infusion of OFA. The metal crumpled inward, jamming the mechanism. The robot toppled over. Izuku vaulted over it and kept moving. He wasn't racking up villain points like Bakugo. He wasn't destroying entire city blocks. He was dismantling the enemy with surgical precision, but the observers in the control room were noticing. "Who is that?" Midnight asked, licking her lips. "He moves like water. No wasted movement," Aizawa muttered, leaning forward. "He's not fighting the robots. He's deactivating them." "It's sufficient. But does he have the drive?" All Might thought, watching the screen nervously. "Does he have the fire?" Then, the ground shook. The zero-pointer. It rose from the ground like a god of destruction. It was taller than the skyscrapers. Its mere movement caused shockwaves that shattered windows. The students froze. Terror washed over the arena. "Run!" someone screamed. The crowd turned and fled. The test was over. Survival was the only priority. Izuku stopped. He stood in the middle of the street, his robes fluttering in the dust cloud. He looked at the giant. It was a manifestation of overwhelming force. A mindless titan. He heard a cry. Ouch! Uraraka Ochako was trapped. A piece of rubble had pinned her leg. She was right in the path of the zero-pointer. Izuku looked at the fleeing students. He looked at the girl. The moth in his mind was silent. The river of one for all roared. Save her. Izuku didn't think. He flowed. He dropped his staff. He bent his knees. One for all. He cranked the valve. 5% wasn't enough to reach that height. He needed more. 10%. 20%. His muscles screamed. His bones creaked. 100%. Pain exploded in his legs, but he welcomed it. It was the pain of effort. He jumped. The pavement shattered. A crater formed where he had stood. Izuku shot into the air like a missile, breaking the sound barrier. He soared past the zero-pointer's face. He was level with the massive metal head. Time slowed down. In canon, this was where he punched. This was where he broke his arm to smash the face in. But Monk Izuku saw the problem. If he smashed the head, the robot would fall forward. It would crush Uraraka. Do not destroy. Redirect. Izuku didn't aim for the face. He aimed for the air above the robot. He spun his body in midair, gathering momentum. He clasped his hands together in a prayer position. Soft palm. He focused 100% of the power into his palms. He didn't hit the robot. He clapped his hands together, aiming the shockwave downward at a 45-degree angle, right at the robot's chest/shoulder area. Heavenly cascade. Clap. The sound was deafening. It was louder than an explosion. It was the sound of the atmosphere being compressed and detonated. The air pressure slammed into the zero-pointer. It didn't punch a hole in it. It pushed the entire massive robot backward. The metal groaned. The hydraulics failed. The sheer force of the wind knocked the Titan off balance. It tipped backward, away from Uraraka, and crashed into the buildings behind it with an earth-shattering boom. Izuku was falling. His legs were broken. They were purple and swollen. The jump had destroyed them. He was plummeting from the sky. I cannot land, he realized calmly. My legs are gone. He looked down. Uraraka was staring up at him, eyes wide. He smiled. The wind, he thought. Be the wind. He took a deep breath. He focused the last dregs of his strength into his mouth. He blew out. A precise, high-pressure jet of air. It wasn't flight, but it was enough to slow his descent. It pushed him sideways. I got you! Uraraka had slapped herself. She was floating. She slapped a piece of debris and threw it toward him. Izuku caught the debris. Uraraka released her quirk. They both tumbled to the ground. Izuku hit the pavement, rolling to absorb the impact. He groaned, the pain finally catching up to him. He lay on his back, staring at the sky. His legs were ruined. His stamina was zero, but the girl was safe. The robot was stopped. And he hadn't thrown a single punch. Uraraka crawled over to him. Are you okay? That was amazing. You just clapped it away. Izuku turned his head. He coughed, a little bit of blood trickling from his lip. I am unbalanced, he wheezed. My legs were not ready for the river. Recovery girl arrived moments later. She looked at Izuku's mangled legs. My goodness, she tooted. You used the cannon to kill a fly. But... She looked at the robot, lying on its back, intact but defeated. You didn't shatter it. Unusual. Izuku closed his eyes as the healing kiss took effect. He drifted into sleep, the hum of One for All quiet in his veins. He had passed the first gate. But the path was only just beginning. The vessel was strong, but it was cracked. He would need more gold to fix it. Kintsugi, he thought, before the darkness took him. I will repair myself with gold. The bus ride to the written exam center was quiet, but inside Izuku Midoriya, a storm was brewing. It had been 12 hours since he had ingested the hair of the world's greatest hero. 12 hours since the dormant power of One for All had settled into the pit of his stomach like a sleeping dragon. It wasn't painful, exactly. It was heavy. It was a dense, vibrating mass of potential energy that hummed against his ribs with every beat of his heart. He sat with his eyes closed, his hands resting on his knees, palms up. He was wearing the standard junior high uniform for the written portion, but beneath it, his body was taped and bandaged, remnants of the American dream plan and the rigors of the beach cleanup. Quiet, Izuku thought, directing his mental focus inward. The river does not flood the banks unless the rain is too heavy. Be the banks. He visualized the power not as a weapon, but as a guest. A rowdy, energetic guest that needed to be told to sit down and drink tea. You're mumbling again. Izuku opened one eye. A girl with a round face and chestnut hair was sitting across the aisle, looking at him with curious, brown eyes. It was the girl he had briefly seen at the orientation entrance, Ochako Uraraka. My apologies, Izuku said, his voice smooth and low. He offered a small bow from his seat. I was not speaking to you, but to my stomach. It is restless. Uraraka blinked, then giggled. Nervous butterflies? Me too. I feel like I'm going to float away if I don't hold on to the seat. Anxiety is just energy without a direction, Izuku said gently. If you float, it is because your spirit is trying to rise above the challenge. Do not fight the rise. Let it carry you. Uraraka stared at him. Most boys his age would have blushed or stuttered. This boy spoke like he was reading from a fortune cookie, but he did it with such genuine sincerity that it didn't feel cheesy. Wow, she breathed. You're really calm. Aren't you scared? It's Yue. Fear is natural, Izuku admitted. He looked out the window at the passing city. But panic is a choice. I choose to breathe. The bus hissed to a halt. The massive glass structures of Yue High loomed overhead, shining like a fortress of diamonds in the morning sun. We are here, Izuku said, standing up. He grabbed his bag. Good luck, Uraraka-san. May your spirit find its anchor. Thanks. You too, Midoriya, he said, stepping off the bus. Izuku Midoriya, the paper tiger. The written exam was, ironically, the easiest part of Izuku's day. For years, his mind had been a frantic archive of hero data, quirk analysis, and tactical simulations. But under Master Gen, he had learned to organize that archive. He didn't just know facts, he understood systems. He looked at the test paper. Question 14. Analyze the ethical ramifications of collateral damage in urban environments regarding quirk usage. Acts 24b. Izuku didn't just write the answer. He wrote a treatise. He wrote about the flow of kinetic energy, the responsibility of the strong to mitigate force rather than simply apply it, and the moral imperative of ahimsa in hero work. His pencil moved across the page with rhythmic precision. He didn't second-guess. He didn't erase. He simply let the knowledge flow from his mind to the paper, as natural as water flowing downhill. When the bell rang, he set his pencil down. He was the first one finished. He sat in silence, meditating, while the other students frantically scribbled their last answers. Bakugo, sitting 3 rows ahead, was vibrating with intensity, his pencil snapping in his grip. Izuku watched the back of his childhood friend's head. You are still fighting the paper, Kaken, Izuku thought with a pang of sympathy. The paper is not your enemy. It is just a vessel for your thoughts. The City of Iron. The practical exam venue was a marvel of engineering. Battle Center B was a replica of a downtown district, complete with skyscrapers, paved roads, and streetlights. It was eerie in its silence. Izuku stood at the gates, now changed into his hero attire, the loose, dark green hakama pants and the white martial arts GI, sleeves tied back to reveal his scarred, muscular forearms. He held his oak staff in his right hand. The other examinees were a riot of color and noise. Some were stretching. Some were boasting. "I'm gonna crush these scrap piles." A boy with shark teeth yelled, "Let's see who gets the most points." Another shouted. Izuku closed his eyes. He felt the vibration of the ground. Deep below, massive engines were turning. The villains, robots, were waking up. "They are machines," Izuku mused. "They have no souls. Yet they have intent. They are programmed to attack. My duty is to neutralize that intent." He felt a presence beside him. "Tenya Ida?" The tall boy with engines in his legs was vibrating with nervous energy, checking his watch for the 10th time. "You," Ida said, adjusting his glasses. "You are the one who was humming earlier. Why are you carrying a stick? Do you think this is a game?" Izuku opened his eyes. "It is a staff. And no, this is not a game. It is a test of character. A staff will not destroy a giant robot," Ida scoffed. "You need firepower. Speed. Power. Destruction is not the only way to win," Izuku said softly. "Start." President Mick's voice exploded from the speakers atop the watchtower. "What's wrong? There are no countdowns in real battles. Run! Run! Run!" The crowd surged. It was a stampede. A chaotic wave of teenagers desperate to prove their worth. Izuku didn't run. He breathed in. He felt the ember of one for all in his gut. "Open the gate." Just a crack. Green lightning crackled faintly around his body. The world seemed to slow down. He could hear the heartbeat of the boy next to him. He could smell the ozone of the robots powering up inside the city. Flow. Izuku took a step. To the others, it looked like he vanished. He didn't sprint in a straight line. He moved like water flowing around rocks. He weaved through the stampede, slipping past elbows and knees, his staff held close to his body to reduce drag. He entered the city. Immediately, a one-pointer, a wheeled robot with a single red eye, rolled out from an alleyway. Target acquired, it beeped mechanically. It raised a machine gun arm. A student behind Izuku, a boy who could shoot lasers from his navel, stopped to aim. "Merci! My first prey." But Izuku was already there. He didn't hit the robot. He dropped into a slide, passing under its gun arm. As he slid, he hooked the crook of his staff behind the robot's front wheel axle. With a precise twist of his hips, using the robot's own forward momentum, Izuku levered the staff. Clang! The robot tripped. It face-planted into the asphalt with a screech of metal. The impact jarred its sensors. Izuku didn't stop to finish it off. He vaulted over the downed machine, tapping a specific panel on its neck with 2 fingers infused with 5% of one for all. Shock! The panel crumpled inward, severing the main power line. The robot's eye went dark. "What?" The naval laser boy gasped. He just turned it off. Izuku was already gone. The art of dismantling. 10 minutes into the exam, the control room was in a state of confusion. "Look at screen 4, Midnight said, leaning forward in her chair. The boy in the robes. He hasn't destroyed a single robot. On the screen, Izuku was a blur of motion. He was surrounded by 3 two-pointers, scorpion-like machines with gripping claws. Most students would have blasted them. Bakugo was currently exploding heads left and right in Battle Center A. Izuku stood in the center of the triangle. He held his staff with both hands. As the first robot lunged, Izuku sidestepped. He guided the claw past him, using his staff to hook the arm and redirect it into the second robot. The robots collided with a crunch. The third robot fired a rubber bullet. Izuku spun his staff like a propeller. The wood, reinforced with his own key and a trace of one for all, deflected the bullet straight back into the robot's optical sensor. Crack! The robot reeled back, blinded. Izuku moved in. He didn't strike the chassis. He struck the joints. Knees. Elbows. Neck swivels. Tap. 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 It was surgical. He was dismantling them. Within seconds, the 3 robots were tangled heaps of metal, engines whining but unable to move. "He's immobilizing them," Aizawa muttered, his eyes narrowing. "He's not wasting energy on destruction. He's removing the threat and moving on." "But the points," President Mike yelled. "They don't count unless they're destroyed. He has 0 villain points." "Maybe," All Might said, watching the screen with a mixture of anxiety and pride. But look at what else he's doing. On the screen, a three-pointer fired a missile at a distracted student. Izuku didn't attack the robot. He threw his staff. The staff spun through the air, intercepting the missile mid-flight, and detonating it safely away from the student. Izuku caught the rebounding staff, bowed to the terrified student, and vanished down an alleyway. He is saving them, Nizu, the principal, squeaked, taking a sip of tea. He is treating the exam not as a hunt, but as a patrol. Fascinating. The eye of the storm. Izuku was sweating. The strain of maintaining full serenity, even at 5%, was taxing his concentration. The noise of the battlefield was deafening. Explosions, screaming, metal tearing. It is so loud, he thought. So much anger. He turned a corner and saw Ida. The engine-legged boy was kicking a robot's head off. Efficient, brutal. You! Ida shouted, spotting Izuku. You have 0 points. I have been counting. You are just running around tripping things. Do you not take this seriously? Izuku paused, balancing on a lamppost. I am taking it very seriously, Ida-san. I am ensuring no one gets hurt. This is a war simulation. Ida yelled, boosting away. Izuku sighed. He dropped to the ground. He checked his mental map. The exam was nearing its end. He had disabled perhaps 20 robots, but by the strict rules of the exam, he hadn't destroyed them. His score was likely 0. Did I make a mistake? Doubt crept in. Master Gen said to be the wind? But the wind does not get into UA. No, Izuku steeled himself. If I must destroy to be a hero, then I do not want to be a hero. I will find another way. Then, the ground jumped. It wasn't a vibration. It was an earthquake. Buildings groaned. Glass shattered and rained down like confetti. From the center of the city, a shadow rose. It blocked out the sun, the 0-pointer. It was colossal. A moving mountain of green metal, treads the size of houses, hands that could crush tanks. Its red eyes glowed with malevolent light. Threat level, Omega, the robot boomed. Its voice shook the fillings in Izuku's teeth. The reaction was instantaneous. Run! It's huge! Forget the points. Move! The examinees turned and fled. It was a rout. The psychology of the exam had shifted from competition to survival. Even Ida, for all his bravery, turned his engines around and sped away. We cannot fight that. Retreat! Izuku stood his ground. The wind from the robot's movement whipped his robes around him. Dust blinded him for a moment. He wasn't afraid of the robot. It was just a machine. He was analyzing it. Too big to trip. Too heavy to redirect. Joints are armored. He turned to leave. There was no point in fighting it. Ouch! The sound was small, barely audible over the grinding gears. But to Izuku's trained ears, it was a thunderclap. He stopped. He turned back. Through the dust, he saw her. The girl with the round face. Uraraka. She had fallen. Her leg was trapped under a heavy slab of concrete debris. She was struggling, her face pale with pain, trying to use her quirk to lift the rock, but she was exhausted. The 0-pointer loomed over her. Its massive tread was descending. It wasn't targeting her specifically, she was just in the way. An ant beneath a boot. She will die, Izuku realized. The thought was cold, factual. The moth in his mind screamed. Run! You can't stop that. You have a stick, but the river in his veins roared. Save her. Izuku dropped his staff. It clattered on the asphalt. He closed his eyes for a fraction of a second. Master Gen. Forgive me. I must be loud. He opened his eyes. Green lightning erupted from his skin, not the gentle flicker of 5%, but a jagged, violent arc. One for all, he whispered. He crouched low. He channeled the power. Not into his arms. Into his legs. 10%. 20%. His muscles screamed. The fibers tore. 50%. The concrete beneath his feet pulverized. 100%. Go! Izuku jumped. It was not a jump, it was a launch. The sound barrier shattered instantly. Boom! He shot upward like a green comet. The force was so great that the street where he had stood simply ceased to exist, replaced by a crater. The pain was blinding. He felt his leg bones splinter. But the adrenaline washed it away. He was in the air. He was level with the zero-pointer's face. The robot's sensors locked onto him. Threat detected. In the original timeline, Izuku punched the robot. He smashed its face in. He used violence to stop violence. But Monk Izuku saw the physics. If he punched the head, the robot would fall backward, or forward. If it fell forward, it would crush Uraraka. I cannot strike it. I must move it. He was flying past the robot's head, aiming for the space above it. Think. Redirect. Flow. He looked at the robot. He looked at the air around him. Air is a fluid. If you compress it enough, it becomes a wall. Izuku spun in midair. He positioned himself directly in front of the robot's upper torso, hovering for a split second at the apex of his jump. He pulled his arms back. The veins in his arms glowed red, pulsing with the full might of All Might's legacy. He didn't make a fist. He opened his hands. Palms facing out. Soft palm. He thrust his palms forward, slamming them together against the empty air. Zephyr cannon. It was a clap. A single, thunderous clap amplified by 100% of one for all. The air in front of him compressed instantly into a solid disk of high-pressure wind. The recoil shattered both of his arms instantly. The sleeves of his GI disintegrated. The blast waves slammed into the zero-pointer's chest. It didn't puncture the metal. It acted like a giant, invisible hand pushing the robot. Kriuk. The massive titan stopped. The wind pressure was distributed across its entire surface area. The robot groaned as its momentum was arrested. Then, slowly, majestically it tipped backward. It fell away from the girl. Boom! The robot crashed into the empty buildings behind it, kicking up a mushroom cloud of dust. Izuku was falling. Gravity reclaimed him. He was a broken doll plummeting from the sky. His legs were useless, dangling like wet rope. His arms were purple and twisted. I am falling, Izuku thought, strangely calm. The ground is hard. He saw the ground rushing up. He saw the tiny figure of Uraraka below. I have no limbs left to break. Release. A hand slapped his cheek. Izuku stopped falling. He hovered, inches from the asphalt. Uraraka, face dirty and streaked with tears, was floating beside him, clutching her stomach. She had slapped him just in time. Release, she wheezed again, putting her fingers together. Gravity returned. Izuku dropped the final 2 inches to the ground. He lay on his back. The pain hit him all at once. It was a white-hot symphony of agony. Every nerve ending was screaming, but he didn't scream. He stared up at the blue sky, framed by the smoke of the defeated robot. He breathed. In. Out. Are you okay? Uraraka crawled over to him. She looked terrified. Your arms, your legs. Izuku turned his head. He coughed, and blood splattered on his white collar. I am unbalanced, he rasped, a weak smile touching his lips. The river was too strong for the banks. Other students began to emerge from hiding. They gathered around, staring at the boy who had slapped a god. Did you see that? He didn't even punch it. He just pushed the air. Is he dead? 1 minute left. President Mike announced, his voice lacking its usual enthusiasm. Izuku tried to move, but his body refused. He closed his eyes. I have 0 points, he thought. I failed the exam. But then he felt a hand on his shoulder. It was Uraraka. She was crying. Thank you, she sobbed. You saved me. You saved me. Izuku's smile widened slightly. No, he thought. I didn't fail. The verdict. The infirmary smelled of antiseptic and gummy bears. Izuku woke up to the feeling of a wet kiss on his forehead. Green energy washed over him, knitting his bones back together, accelerating his cellular division. It drained his stamina instantly. My goodness, a croaky voice said. Izuku opened his eyes. Recovery Girl was standing over him, shaking her head. Beside her stood a very skinny, very worried All Might. You really went and did it, didn't you? Recovery Girl sighed. You used the power like a bomb. Your arms and legs were pulverized. I am sorry, Izuku whispered. I tried to be gentle. Gentle? Recovery Girl hit him on the shin with her cane. You created a sonic boom with your hands. There is nothing gentle about atmospheric displacement. Young Midoriya. All Might stepped forward. He looked relieved. I was watching. That was incredible. And terrifying. Mostly terrifying. Izuku sat up slowly. His limbs were heavy, but whole. Scarred, but functional. Did she make it? Izuku asked. Uraraka-san? She is fine, All Might assured him. A sprained ankle. She wanted to thank you, but I sent her home. Izuku nodded. He looked at his hands. I have 0 points, Izuku said quietly. I failed the test, All Might-san. I'm sorry I wasted your gift. All Might's face softened. He exchanged a look with Recovery Girl. Young Midoriya, All Might said, sitting on the edge of the bed. Do you know what the school motto is? Plus Ultra, Izuku said. Go beyond. Exactly. And do you think a hero's school would reject someone who went beyond the call of duty to save a life? All Might reached into his pocket and pulled out a remote. He clicked it. A holographic screen popped up in the air. It was a video of the teacher's lounge. He stopped the 0-pointer without destroying it. Midnight was saying on the screen. Control. Precision. And self-sacrifice. He had 0 hesitation, Aizawa's voice added. And 0 villain points. But Nisa's voice chimed in. Heroism is not just about defeating villains. It is about saving people. The screen changed. It showed the scoreboard. Izuku Midoriya. Villain points 0. Rescue points 60. Total 60. Izuku stared at the screen. His eyes widened. Rescue points? A secret metric. All Might boomed, transforming into his muscular form for emphasis. For how can a hero course reject one who saves others at the cost of himself? That is the essence of a hero. All Might placed a massive hand on Izuku's shoulder. You did not fail, young Midoriya. You passed with flying colors. Welcome to your hero academia. Izuku felt the tears welling up. He didn't try to stop them. He didn't try to be the stone or the wind. He just let himself be a boy. Thank you, he wept, bowing his head. But... All Might held up a finger. Next time, try not to break every bone in your body. The pacifist path is hard to walk in a wheelchair. Izuku laughed through his tears. Yes, All Might-san. I will work on the banks. The ripple. A week later, Izuku stood in front of Class 1A. The door was massive. He took a deep breath. He smoothed the front of his UA uniform. He had requested permission to wear the hakama pants instead of the standard slacks, citing religious/martial reasons, and Nisa had approved it, likely out of curiosity. He slid the door open. The classroom was loud. Get your feet off the desk. Ha! Make me, 4 eyes. Bakugo and Ida were at it again. Uraraka was chatting with the invisible girl. Izuku stepped inside. The noise didn't stop, but the atmosphere shifted. It was like a cool breeze had entered a sauna. Bakugo looked up. He saw Izuku. He saw the calm way Izuku held his bag. He saw the lack of fear. Deku, Bakugo grunted. Good morning, Kaken, Izuku said, walking to his desk. He passed Uraraka. She jumped up. Deku-kun! You made it! She beamed. I was so worried. Your arm. Is it okay? It is healed, Izuku said, showing her his hand. Thanks to the school nurse. And thank you for your concern. You were amazing, she said loud enough for the class to hear. You just... clap. And the robot fell over. The class turned to look at him. The boy with the 0 points. The boy who broke himself to save a stranger. Izuku sat down at his desk. He placed his hands on the surface. He closed his eyes for a moment, finding his center amidst the new chaos. The mountain is here, he thought. The moth is gone. If you're here to make friends, pack up and leave. A man in a yellow sleeping bag rolled into the room. Shota Aizawa. He looked at the class with tired, bloodshot eyes. He looked at Izuku. Izuku met his gaze. He didn't flinch. He bowed his head slightly in respect to the teacher. Aizawa paused. He saw the stillness in the boy. Interesting, Aizawa thought. Most of them are puppies. This one is waiting. It took you 8 seconds to shut up, Aizawa muttered, unzipping his bag. Time is limited. You lack rationality. Put these on and meet me outside. He held up a gym uniform. We're doing a quirk apprehension test, the class groaned. A test? Uraraka cried. But we just got here. What about the ceremony? Heroes don't have time for ceremonies, Aizawa said. He looked directly at Izuku. And if you place last, you will be expelled. The threat hung in the air. Izuku stood up. He took the uniform. Expulsion, he thought. Another stone in the river. He walked to the changing rooms, his steps silent, his mind clear. Let the water flow. The locker room of Class 1A smelled of fresh rubber, deodorant, and the sharp, nervous sweat of 15-year-olds who had just realized the gravity of their situation. Expulsion? The word hung in the humid air, bouncing off the metal lockers. It was spoken by Denki Kaminari, a boy with a streak of black in his blonde hair and a look of sheer panic on his face. On the first day, that's totally unfair. We just got here. It is a trial by fire. Tenya Ida announced, chopping the air with a stiff hand as he changed into his gym uniform. UA is the pinnacle of hero education. It is only natural that the standards are rigorous, though expulsion does seem severe. In the corner of the room, Izuku Midoriya was folding his clothes. He did not crumple his uniform into his locker. He folded the hakama trousers he had worn to class, dark green, durable fabric sanctioned by Principal Nizu, into a perfect square. He placed his white GI jacket on top, smoothing out the wrinkles with a deliberate, brushing motion of his hand. He was shirtless. Whoa, dude, a redhead named Eijiro Kurishima said, pausing mid-change. He stared at Izuku's back. Those are some manly scars. The chatter in the room died down as the other boys looked. Izuku's back was a map of his journey. There were faint, white lines from brambles and sharp rocks during his time on the mountain. There were friction burns on his shoulders from hauling rusted cars at Dagoba Beach. And there was a distinct, starburst-shaped discoloration on his lower back where he had taken a bad fall during waterfall meditation. But it wasn't just the scars. It was the muscle. Izuku wasn't bulky. He didn't have the puffed-up, glamour muscle look of someone who spent hours in front of a gym mirror. His musculature was dense, coiled, and functional. It clung to his bones like wet rope. His lats flared slightly, tapering down to a waist that looked like it was carved from oak. Izuku turned around, pulling on the blue UA gym shirt. He offered a small, polite smile. They are just reminders, Izuku said softly. The mountain teaches lessons. Sometimes it writes them on the skin so you do not forget. Kirishima blinked. That's deep. You're the guy who slapped the giant robot, right? I'm Kirishima. Midoriya. Izuku bowed his head. It is a pleasure. Hey, Midoriya. Minoru Mineta, a small boy with grape-like balls on his head, scurried over, looking anxious. You don't think Aizawa-sensei is serious, do you? I mean, I can't go home. My mom already bought a My Son is a Hero mug. Izuku tied his shoes, simple, flat-soled martial arts shoes he had brought from the temple. The teacher's aura is heavy, Izuku observed. He carries a great weight of expectation. He does not lie about the stakes, but perhaps he lies about the outcome. Regardless, fear will only make your hands shake. A shaking hand drops the ball. So, don't be scared? Mineta asked, trembling. Be scared, Izuku corrected, standing up and closing his locker with a soft click. But do not let the fear sit in the driver's seat. Put it in the trunk. He picked up a water bottle and walked toward the exit. The boys watched him go. He moved silently, his footsteps making no sound on the tile floor. Is it just me, Hanta Ciro whispered, or is that guy really intense for a teenager? He's like a monk, Ojiro murmured, touching his own tail thoughtfully. A really ripped monk. The rational deception. The pea grounds were vast, a sprawl of dirt and grass baking under the midday sun. The sky was a piercing, cloudless blue, a stark contrast to the gloom radiating from Shota Aizawa. The homeroom teacher stood with his hands in his pockets, his capture scarf hanging loosely around his neck like a drowsy snake. He looked at the 20 students lined up before him. The Department of Education allows schools to handle their own curriculum, Aizawa droned, his voice dry. Here, we don't do orientation. We don't do trust falls. We do reality. He held up a softball. Bakugo. You finished first in the practical exam. How far could you throw in middle school? Katsuki Bakugo stepped forward. He glared at the ball, then at Izuku, who was standing perfectly still at the end of the line, eyes closed, face turned up toward the sun. Ignoring me again, Bakugo thought, his teeth grinding. Damn nerd. 67 meters, Bakugo spat. Try it with your quirk, Aizawa said. Anything goes, as long as you stay in the circle. Bakugo marched into the circle. He stretched his arms, a predatory grin spreading across his face. This was it. This was where he showed the pebble that he was still the boulder. He wound up. Die. Boom. An explosion erupted from his palm, propelling the ball like a cannon shot. It screamed through the air, leaving a trail of smoke and heat. Die. Izuku murmured, opening his eyes. An interesting choice of ki. The ball landed. Aizawa held up his device. 705.2 meters. The class erupted. 700 meters? That's crazy. We can use our quirks as much as we want? This is gonna be awesome. Aizawa's eyes narrowed. The air temperature seemed to drop 10 degrees. Awesome? He repeated. You have 3 years to become heroes. You think it's going to be awesome? You think the villains are going to let you have fun? He smiled. It was a terrifying, jagged expression that didn't reach his eyes. Right. Let's make this interesting. The student with the lowest total score across all 8 events will be judged as having no potential, and will be instantly expelled. The silence that followed was absolute. Expelled? Ochako Uraraka stepped forward, her hands clenched. But it's the first day. That's too unreasonable. Natural disasters are unreasonable, Aizawa countered cold, stepping toward her. Villain attacks are unreasonable. Catastrophic accidents are unreasonable. The world is unfair. Heroes are the ones who correct that unfairness. If you want to hang out at a burger joint after school, go to a normal high school. He turned his gaze to Izuku. Izuku met it. He felt the pressure coming off the man. It was a test. Aizawa was looking for weakness. He was looking for hesitation. He wants to prune the weak branches so the tree can grow, Izuku realized. It is a cruel kindness. Welcome to UA's hero course, Aizawa said, brushing a lock of black hair from his face. Plus Ultra. The tests of the body. The events began. Test 1, 50-meter dash. Izuku was paired against Tenya Ida. Ida was vibrating with preparation. I shall demonstrate the superior engineering of the Ida family engines. Izuku bowed to him. I shall do my best to keep up. On your mark. Get set. Bang. Ida was a blur. His engines roared, blue flames shooting from his calves. He crossed the line in 3.04 seconds. Izuku did not have engines. He did not use one for all. Instead, he used the breath of the gale. At the sound of the gun, Izuku exhaled sharply, emptying his lungs to tighten his core. He drove his feet into the earth, his toes gripping through the soles of his shoes. He ran with perfect efficiency, spine straight, arms pumping in rhythm with his stride, zero wasted motion. He crossed the line in 5.51 seconds. It wasn't superhuman. But for a boy without a speed quirk, it was startlingly fast. Whoa, Zero said. He's fast on his feet. Good form, Ida noted, adjusting his glasses as Izuku slowed down. Your stride length is optimal for your height. Thank you, Izuku said, his breathing barely elevated. You move like a bullet train, Ida-san. Impressive. Test 2, grip strength. Mizo Shoji, the boy with multiple arms, squeezed the device. 540 kilograms. Beast mode. Mineta squeaked. Izuku took the device. He held it in his right hand. He didn't squeeze immediately. He closed his eyes. He visualized his tendons. He aligned the bones of his forearm. He rooted his feet. Focus. He squeezed. Not with anger, but with tension. 56 kilograms. It was average. Above average for a teenager, certainly, but nothing compared to Shoji. He's not using his quirk, Bakugo muttered, watching from the sidelines. Why isn't he using it? Maybe he can't? Kirishima suggested. He broke his limbs last time, right? Maybe it has a long cooldown, Bakugo scowled. No. He's holding back. He's looking down on us. Test 3, standing long jump. This time, Izuku used it. He stood at the line. He channeled one for all, the valve. 5%. Green lightning crackled faintly around his legs. It was subtle, barely visible in the bright sunlight. He jumped. He cleared the sandbox entirely. He landed softly in the grass beyond, his knees bending to absorb the impact silently. Aizawa marked his clipboard. Control is better than the exam. But output is low. Test 4, repeated sidesteps. Mineta was a blur, bouncing off his own balls. Izuku moved like a pendulum. Left. Right. Left. Right. He entered a trance state, his eyes unfocused, his body moving on autopilot. He didn't tire. He just kept flowing until the whistle blew. The ball throw. The sun was beginning to dip, casting long shadows across the field. The class was exhausted. Only a few students remained for the ball throw. Uraraka stepped up. She touched the ball, made it float, and then threw it. It drifted up, and never came down. Infinity, Aizawa said, showing the device. Infinity? The class screamed. That's cheating. Kaminari laughed. It is physics, Izuku murmured. If gravity is negated, inertia is eternal. Midoriya, Aizawa called out. You're next. Izuku walked to the circle. The atmosphere changed. The class went quiet. Everyone remembered the entrance exam. They remembered the boy who shattered the sky. Izuku picked up the ball. It felt heavy and rough in his hand. He stood in the center of the circle. He didn't wind up immediately. He stood with his feet shoulder-width apart, the ball held loosely at his side. He closed his eyes. The river, he thought. One for all. He felt the power surging. It wanted to be released. It wanted to smash. If I use 100%, I will break my arm again, Izuku reasoned. If I break my arm, Aizawa-sensei will expel me. He believes a hero who hurts himself is a liability. He is right. Izuku took a breath. He tried to dial it down. 5%. He wound back his arm. Smash. As he initiated the throw, he felt the familiar rush. But then, erasure. The power vanished. The river dried up instantly. Izuku stumbled forward, the ball leaving his hand with a pathetic plop. It rolled a measly 46 meters. What? Izuku blinked. He looked at his hands. The energy was gone. I erased your quirk. Izuku turned. Aizawa stood there, his hair floating in defiance of gravity, his eyes glowing red. The capture scarf was floating around him like a halo of restraint. That entrance exam, Aizawa said, walking closer. It was impressive. But it was reckless. You have zero control, do you? I am learning control, Izuku said calmly, though his heart hammered. You broke your arms and legs to save one person, Aizawa scolded. If you do that in the field, who saves you? You become a burden. A hero who cannot stand after one attack is not a hero. He is a victim waiting to happen. Aizawa stopped a foot away from Izuku. I saw the reports. You talk about peace. You talk about nonviolence. But your power? It is a cannon. It destroys your body every time you fire it. Do you think you can save anyone with a broken body? No, Izuku admitted. Then you have no potential, Aizawa said coldly. Pack your bags. He blinked. His hair fell. The red glow faded. I've returned your quirk. You have one more throw. Get it over with so I can expel you. Izuku stood there. The words stung. Not because they were mean, but because they were true. Master Gen had said the same thing. A broken vessel holds no water. He looked at the ball. He picked it up again. I cannot use 100% on my arm. It will shatter. I cannot use 5% on my whole body. It will not be enough to impress him. He needed a middle path. He needed to focus the river through a narrow channel. Focus, Izuku thought. Not the whole arm. Not the whole fist. He remembered the old man in the mountains teaching him to flick a fly off a rock without disturbing the pebble. The tip of the finger. He assumed a stance. It wasn't a pitcher's stance. It was a martial artist's stance. Feet rooted. Hips low. He held the ball in his right hand. He placed his left hand over it, as if praying. He's meditating again, Bakugo growled. Just throw it, Deku. Izuku ignored the noise. He channeled one for all. He didn't let it flood his body. He pushed it. He forced the raging river into his right arm, then into his hand, then into his index finger. The pressure was immense. His finger glowed red, veins bulging. It felt like it was going to burst. Hold it, he wound up. He threw the ball using his hips and shoulder for mechanical power. At the very last second, the moment the ball was leaving his fingertips. Snap! He released the energy. Finger. Flick. Boom. The sound was like a gunshot. A shockwave erupted from his hand, kicking up a cloud of dust that blew back Aizawa's hair. The ball shot into the sky. It tore through the clouds, leaving a spiral wake in the air. It vanished into the stratosphere. Izuku stood in the circle. His right index finger was purple, swollen, and broken. He cradled it gently against his chest, but his arm was fine. His legs were fine. He was standing. The device in Aizawa's hand beeped. 705.3 meters. Aizawa stared at the number. Then he looked at the boy. Izuku turned. He was sweating, his face pale from the sudden spike of pain, but his expression was serene. He bowed deeply. I am still standing, sensei, Izuku said, his voice steady. And I can still move. Aizawa's mouth twitched. A slow, terrifying grin spread across his face. So you can, Aizawa whispered. So you can. The hot coal. The class was stunned. He beat Bakugo by 0.1 meters. Siro shouted. And with a broken finger? Kirishima gasped. That's manly as hell. But one person was not impressed. Katsuki Bakugo stood frozen. His brain was short-circuiting. 700 meters? Without a quirk? No, he used a quirk. I saw the light. I saw the power. He lied. He lied to me for 10 years. DKU. The scream tore from Bakugo's throat like a demon escaping hell. Explosions popped in his palms as he launched himself forward. He wasn't thinking. He was pure, unadulterated rage. You bastard! Tell me what the hell is going on. He closed the distance in seconds. He raised his right hand, ready to blast Izuku's face into the dirt. Bakugo, stop! Aizawa shouted, raising his scarf. But he was too far away. Izuku saw him coming. In the past, Izuku would have cowered. He would have put his arms up to block and cried. But Izuku saw the attack for what it was. It was sloppy. It was telegraphed. It was heavy with hate. He is overcommit, Izuku analyzed instantly. His center of gravity is too far forward. Izuku didn't step back. He stepped in. As Bakugo swung his right arm, Izuku stepped inside the arc of the swing. He placed his left hand, the uninjured one, on the inside of Bakugo's elbow. He placed his right forearm, careful of the broken finger, against Bakugo's chest. Soft palm, turning tide. Izuku didn't push. He simply rotated his hips. He guided Bakugo's momentum. He used the force of the explosion against him. Bakugo's feet left the ground. The world spun. Wham! Bakugo hit the dirt hard. The air left his lungs in a wheeze. Before Bakugo could recover, Izuku was on top of him. But it wasn't a violent mount. Izuku was kneeling, one knee pressing gently but firmly on Bakugo's solar plexus, effectively pinning him. Izuku's left hand held Bakugo's wrist, keeping the explosive palm pointed safely away from both of them. Silence descended on the field. The students watched with their mouths open. The quirkless kid had just pinned the strongest student in the class in less than a second. Bakugo struggled, thrashing like a wild animal. Get off me! I'll kill you, Kaken, Izuku whispered. His voice was low, sad, and cut through the screaming. Bakugo froze. He looked up. Izuku was looking down at him. There was no triumph in green eyes. No mockery. Only a deep, resonant pity. You are holding a hot coal, Izuku said. What? Bakugo snarled. Anger. Izuku continued, tightening his grip on the wrist slightly to prevent another explosion. You hold it in your hand, squeezing it tight, waiting to throw it at me. You think it gives you power, but look at you. Izuku leaned closer. You are the one getting burned, Kaken. Your hands are smoking. Your heart is ash. If you do not drop the coal, you will consume yourself. Bakugo stared at him. For the first time in his life, he saw something in Deku that terrified him more than strength. He saw peace, and against peace, Bakugo's rage felt impotent. Midoriya! Step away! Aizawa's capture scarf wrapped around Izuku's waist and pulled him back. Izuku didn't resist. He let himself be pulled, releasing Bakugo gently. He stood up, brushed the dust from his hakama, and bowed to the teacher. My apologies, sensei. I acted in self-defense. I did not harm him. Aizawa looked at Bakugo, who was lying in the dirt, staring at the sky with a look of shattered confusion. Then he looked at Izuku. Go to the nurse, Aizawa sighed, rubbing his temples. Get that finger fixed. The rest of you, finish the tests. The scoreboard. The sun had set. The floodlights were on. The class gathered around the holographic display. Okay, Aizawa said. Here are the results. The total is a summation of your performance in all events. The list popped up. 1. Momo Yaoyorozu. 2. Shoto Todoroki. 3. Katsuki Bakugo. 6. Tenya Ida. 10. Izuku Midoriya. 10th? Uraraka blinked. But he got that huge score on the ball throw. His grip strength was average, Ida analyzed. And his sprints were fast but not quirk-enhanced. It is a balanced score. At least he's not last, Mineta wept, pointing to his own name at 19. By the way, Aizawa said, turning off the hologram. I was lying about the expulsion. Huh! It was a rational deception to draw out the upper limits of your potential. What? I knew it! Yaoyorozu clapped her hands. It was obviously a pedagogical ruse. I didn't know! Mineta cried. Izuku stood in the back, nursing his bandaged finger. He looked at Aizawa. He is lying again, Izuku thought. He was ready to send me home. But the finger, the control, it changed his mind. Aizawa caught Izuku's eye. He held it for a moment, then gave a barely perceptible nod. He sees me, Izuku realized. He sees the struggle. Class dismissed, Aizawa said, walking away. There are handouts in the classroom. Don't leave them. The walk home. The walk to the station was quiet. Most of the students had already left, but Izuku walked slowly, enjoying the cool evening air. Deku-kun, he turned. Uraraka was running to catch up to him. Ida was power walking beside her. Wait up! She panted. We're going to the station too, Uraraka-san. Ida-san, Izuku smiled. You performed well today. You were amazing. Uraraka beamed. That finger flick. And the way you handled Bakugo. You are holding a hot coal. That was so cool. Like something out of a movie. It was poetic, Ida admitted. Though somewhat melodramatic. But your technique in restraining him was flawless. Is that the martial art you practice? It is a soft style, Izuku explained, walking with them. It uses the opponent's energy against them. It is designed to neutralize, not injure. Whatever it is, it's awesome, Uraraka said. Hey, you know. Deku sounds kinda like you can do it in my head. But Bakugo uses it to be mean. It used to mean useless wooden doll, Izuku said, looking at the moon. But now, I think I will keep it. Really? Yes, Izuku said. A wooden doll does not break easily. And it can be carved into anything. He looked at his friends. For the first time in years, he wasn't walking alone. I am Deku, he said firmly. But I will define what that means. Somewhere in the distance, a police siren wailed. The peace of the night was fragile. Izuku knew that. He knew the world was loud, and violent, and cruel. But as he walked with his new friends, listening to Ida lecture about train schedules and Uraraka laugh about Aizawa's sleeping bag, the moth in his mind was silent. The water was rippling. And for now, the ripples were good.